This is a new podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to The Deep Dive, where we take a stack of incredible sources and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into the quiet revolution of Jugaad and social innovation in Nepal.
Mm.
And when I say Jugaad, I'm talking about much more than just a clever hack or, some improvised solution. It's truly an entire philosophy.
That's exactly right. At its core, Jugaad is this ingenious art of doing more with less, of seeing opportunities even when faced with pretty significant difficulties, and of cleverly turning limitations into genuine advantages. Our sources trace its origin as a survival tactic on the streets of India. You might famously see something as unexpected as, like, a washing machine repurposed into a yogurt maker, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that example. And what's remarkable, isn't it, is that this isn't just some grassroots thing anymore. This philosophy, flexibility, cost effectiveness, inclusiveness, it's now being studied and even adopted by huge global corporations, Philips, Google, GE. They're recognizing it as maybe a key to real innovation, especially now with global economic instability and, resource constraints everywhere.
Absolutely. And our mission for this deep dive today is really to explore how this bottom-up ingenuity in Nepal isn't just solving critical everyday problems. We're talking energy, agriculture, waste management, education, the big ones. But it's also creating truly unique and viable business models, basically from scratch. And what's particularly striking, I think, is how these homegrown solutions often prove to be far more effective and sustainable than the big top-down government programs.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. To really get why Jugaad isn't just a choice, but like an absolute lifeline in Nepal, we have to look at its unique economic situation. It's a bit of a paradox. The country has made incredible strides in poverty reduction, actually cutting it in half in just 7 years. I mean, that's seriously impressive.
It really is.
But here's the twist, right? This wasn't driven by strong domestic economic growth. Our sources highlight that this success came almost exclusively from remittances. So money sent home by Nepalists working abroad.
Yeah, a huge chunk of the economy.
A staggering amount. Up to 30% of Nepal's GDP, the gross domestic product. So you have the situation where people might have some financial resources coming in, but they're still facing this stark lack of formal opportunities and, crucially, reliable government services within the country.
Right.
It creates this really interesting environment, fertile ground, you could say, for grassroots innovation to just bloom.
Yeah, and zooming out a bit, this economic backdrop is unfortunately made worse by several systemic problems. These make traditional centralized solutions, well, often pretty ineffective. First, there's significant economic stagnation. You've got low productivity, a weak industrial sector, very limited job creation, and all that fuels the massive youth migration you just mentioned. They have to go elsewhere for opportunities.
Right.
Then you have the severe geographical and ecological vulnerability. I mean, Nepal's mountainous terrain is a huge natural barrier to development.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most vulnerable countries globally to climate change and natural disasters, which cause regular, just devastating economic losses.
And on top of all that, there's the public service gap. You see it everywhere. Our sources describe, chronic government inefficiency, excessive bureaucracy, a real lack of accountability. Plus, there's a significant digital divide between urban and rural areas, which really hampers any effort towards e-government. Even the local governments, after federalism, they're struggling to manage resources and deliver basic quality services in health, education, you name it.
So this raises a really important question for me. What, for you, is the biggest implication of this, this profound vacuum? Because this very void between what citizens need and what the state can actually deliver isn't just background noise. It's precisely where Jugaad doesn't just emerge, it thrives.
That's such a key point.
The documented failures of government programs aren't just unfortunate context. They are, in fact, the primary catalyst. These grassroots solutions pop up and often succeed exactly where formal systems have failed.
It's stark, isn't it? And for me, what jumps out is how this void isn't just a failure, it's actively creating the conditions for this ingenuity. It's almost a perverse kind of catalyst,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Can you give us some vivid examples? Like, where has Jugaad directly stepped into this vacuum?
Absolutely. Let's take Nepal's public hospitals. Hundreds of pieces of faulty medical equipment are just gathering dust, sometimes for years, because the system either can't or won't repair them. And often it's something simple, like a burnt-out power supply or maybe wires damaged by rodents, basic stuff.
Oh, wow.
Or think about urban waste management. Even if households sort their waste diligently, it often ends up all mixed together again in the landfills anyway, despite good intentions.
That must be incredibly frustrating for people. But this vacuum, as we see, is precisely what Jugaad fills.
Exactly. So you see grassroots initiatives springing up, like the National Innovation Center stepping in to actually repair that medical equipment, or social enterprises like Creation and Clean City, creating waste management systems that actually work. It really demonstrates that Jugaad's success is almost directly proportional to the failures of the formal system. It's not accidental. It's a direct response to a lack of competence or action from the state. It makes it a powerful and necessary force.
Okay, this leads us to a really fascinating development then. At the heart of this innovation ecosystem in Nepal is this inspiring figure, Mahabir Poon. He's a Ramon Magsaysay Award winner, often called Asia's Nobel Prize for Public Service. He's famous for bringing wireless internet to incredibly remote Nepali villages years ago.
Real pioneer.
Definitely. And his big project now, the National Innovation Center, or NIC, is basically Jugaad at a meta level. It's an institute designed specifically to support and scale grassroots innovation across the whole country.
And what makes NIC particularly innovative, really revolutionary, is its business model. It doesn't rely on unpredictable donations, which is the downfall of so many initiatives. PUN has this brilliant plan. Fund the center's R&D by building and operating a 10-15 megawatt hydroelectric power plant.
Wow.
Yeah. The electricity gets sold to the national grid, providing a steady, self-sustaining income stream for the innovators. It's just a prime example of Jugaad thinking. Yeah. Use Nepal's key resource hydropower to solve a key problem, the lack of R&D funding for homegrown ideas.
So if I'm getting this right, NIC isn't just another innovator itself. It's acting more like an operating system for Jugaad in Nepal.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
It provides the platform, the resources like funding, tools, and mentorship too. Because often these Jugaad solutions, they remain kind of fragmented, isolated, right? So NIC was created specifically to solve that problem, giving these brilliant but often local ideas a pathway to develop, prototype, and actually scale up.
Spot on. It institutionalizes the whole innovation process. It provides a structured path from just a raw idea to a viable product. And that includes support for prototyping, development, even intellectual property protection, which is crucial.
Right.
And what's really impressive is its open-door policy. PUN himself says they don't require academic qualifications. It truly democratizes innovation.
So anyone can walk in with a good idea.
Pretty much. If it's viable, they'll look at it. It's not just for people with fancy degrees. And as you said, that self-sustaining financing model gives it long-term independence. No donor pressure.
You highlighted how NAC functions as this operating system. Can you give us one of the most powerful examples of their direct impact? I'm guessing their work in healthcare must be pretty striking.
Oh, absolutely. It is. The NIC took on this staggering project, basically fixing the failures of the public healthcare system's equipment maintenance. They repaired 484 pieces of equipment, including 36 ventilators and 23 dialysis machines. Critical stuff.
Wow, 484 pieces.
Yeah, and this equipment had been just sitting there gathering dust in hospitals for years because of often minor faults, things bureaucracy just couldn't or wouldn't deal with. The total cost for NIC to fix all that, just 243 million Nepali rupees, which sounds like a lot, but considering the value of the equipment.
It's peanuts compared to buying new. That's an incredible demonstration of how agility and, focused ingenuity can just cut through red tape. It almost makes you wonder, if this works in Nepal's hospitals, what could it mean for resource-strapped systems anywhere else?
Precisely. It wasn't just about saving the government millions, though it did that. Far more importantly, it returned life-saving equipment to literally thousands of patients. It's such a powerful demonstration of how a small, nimble team fueled by ingenuity can profoundly outperform a large, slow bureaucracy. It really underscores how Jugaad excels at tackling those last-mile challenges, exactly where formal systems often just falter.
And speaking of those last-mile challenges, what else is NIC working on now? Are they tackling other areas like that?
Oh yeah, NIC isn't slowing down. They're actively developing medical drones to deliver medicines and collect samples in really remote villages where roads are bad or non-existent. They're also working on affordable incubators for newborns, advanced water filtration systems, even AI projects for agriculture.
AI too. Okay.
Yeah, and all of these are developed by incredibly motivated young people.
Yeah.
Regardless of their formal education backgrounds. It's about the idea and the drive.
That idea of reaching where others can't, that extends powerfully into Nepal's agriculture sector too, doesn't it? It's so Vital employs over 60% of the population. But it operates way below capacity, underinvestment, lack of irrigation, climate vulnerability, the usual suspects. How are farmers applying Jugaad there?
Well, what's fascinating in agriculture is how Jugaad has evolved. It's
Yeah.
moved beyond just simple hacks,
Mm.
like modifying a bicycle into a plow, that kind of clever fix.
Yeah.
Now it's developing into complex integrated systems that generate multiple types of value at the same time. These aren't just clever solutions. They're becoming truly sustainable business models. Think about an agrivoltaic project, for example. It's not just about producing energy or just about growing crops. It does both on the same piece of land. And often it also addresses water scarcity, maybe powers pumps, and can even support local infrastructure, like a school or health center nearby.
Ah, I see. So it's combining energy, water, food, social benefits, all in one integrated model.
Exactly. Or you see agroforestry models that simultaneously combine food production with soil restoration, boosting biodiversity, and even creating financial instruments like carbon credits. It's systemic thinking.
So it's about stacking value. That's brilliant. Can we look at some specifics like water-saving agriculture?
Sure. ID Nepal pioneered these low-cost drip irrigation systems. The kits cost only about $25, $30, really cheap. But they save 50–60% of water compared to traditional flood irrigation.
Wow, that much.
Yeah. And this simple tech lets small farmers grow high-value vegetables like tomatoes or chilies during the dry season when they couldn't before. They often recoup their tiny investment in just one harvest, and it significantly boosts family income. It's a stark contrast to those huge, expensive, and incredibly slow state-run irrigation projects.
Definitely a grassroots win.
And beyond just efficiency, you see truly creative and regenerative solutions popping up. There's a UNDP-supported agrivoltaic pilot in Kinghair. Solar panels are installed above the farmland. They provide clean electricity, power water pumps, and allow high-value crops like lemons and dragon fruit to grow underneath in the partial shade.
Okay, that's clever. Using the space twice.
Exactly. And farmers are also developing their own biofertilizers, making and selling vermicompost to tackle the chronic shortage and cost of chemical fertilizers.
Right.
Plus using simple, effective natural pest protection like planting marigolds around crops.
I love that. Marigolds as insect repellents, that's pure Jugaad right there. Simple, effective, local knowledge.
It is. And then there's regenerative agroforestry, integrating trees back into farmlands. This reverses soil degradation, increases biodiversity, and creates new income from timber, organic products, maybe even carbon credits down the line.
So these aren't just isolated fixes. They're really building more resilient and profitable farming systems from the ground up.
That's the key takeaway. Systemic solutions addressing multiple challenges at once.
Okay, next up, power and connectivity. Nepal has suffered for so long from a severe energy crisis, long power outages, painfully slow grid expansion, especially to rural areas. It created this huge, undeniable need for decentralized solutions.
Yeah, and what's particularly noteworthy here is how these grassroots energy initiatives in Nepal, they aren't just a temporary fix while waiting for the national grid. They're actually building a fundamentally different kind of energy infrastructure. It's decentralized, it's community-owned, it's incredibly resilient to shocks, and importantly, it's built from the ground up on modern, market-based digital payment systems. They've essentially leapfrogged the traditional, slow, expensive, centralized grid model.
That's really amazing. So they're skipping a whole phase of development. Tell us more about, say, GAM Power's solar microgrids.
Right, GAM Power pioneered Nepal's first community-owned solar microgrid project. Their business model is really innovative. It combines grant funding and commercial loans with a pay-as-you-go system. They use smart meters and mobile money, like Isua, for payments. This makes electricity both accessible and affordable for rural communities.
Okay.
But their key insight, the really clever part, was realizing that financial sustainability depended on productive end use, just households using energy for lighting at night. That wasn't quite enough to make the numbers work long term.
Ah, they needed customers using more power more consistently.
Exactly. They needed commercial customers, essentially. So they smartly pivoted. They started providing solar irrigation systems for farmers. This directly increased farmer incomes reports, say by 30–100%, and crucially, it created a reliable customer base willing and able to pay for the electricity.
That's a really smart way to build financial sustainability. You connect the energy solution directly to economic uplift for the customers. Very Jugaad.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not just corporations pioneering this, right? You mentioned Mahabir Poon earlier.
Oh, absolutely not. You have incredible individuals, too, like Bir Bahadur Gal. He had no formal engineering training, but he electrified thousands of rural homes by creating these hydro mini-grids using local streams.
Amazing.
And the resilience of these local networks is just striking. Take the microhydro plant in Barpak. After the devastating 2015 earthquake, the community didn't just wait for outside help.
They got it running again themselves, quickly. And it became the absolute basis for the community's recovery, keeping flour mills running, communications operational, when everything else was down.
Incredible resilience. Okay, shifting gears to urban challenges now. Nepal's cities, especially Kathmandu, are literally choking on garbage. Kathmandu alone generates, 1,200 metric tons of solid waste every day. A lot of it ends up in overflowing landfills. And sadly, efforts to separate waste at home often get undermined because the collection process mixes it all up again.
It's a huge problem. But what's profound about the waste management enterprises emerging is how they're formalizing a sector that was previously informal, dangerous, and deeply marginalized. They aren't just cleaning up cities, they're building an entirely new, dignified, green economic value chain, really from scratch.
How so?
Well, traditionally, waste collection in Nepal was done by extremely poor and marginalized people,
Yeah.
Safai karmas, often working without any protective gear, for unfair wages with no respect.
Right, a really tough existence.
What makes companies like Creation and Clean City so innovative is how they purposefully integrate these very workers into their formal operations. They provide tangible benefits, proper protective equipment, training, formal employment contracts, fairer wages, even insurance coverage. Clean City in particular has a strong focus on empowering women within this sector.
So they're essentially transforming informal pickers into kind of micro-entrepreneurs within a structured supply chain.
Yeah,
That's incredibly powerful, social impact alongside environmental.
exactly. It solves multiple problems at once.
Tell us about Creation and their green route. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, Creation developed this innovative reverse transport model. They figured out trucks often return empty after making deliveries out of Kathmandu. So they utilized these empty return trips to transport sorted plastic waste from Kathmandu to recycling facilities elsewhere. Smart logistics.
That is clever, using dead capacity.
And their Green Shift Nepal project set up a whole network of recycling centers along major highways, run by youth ambassadors. It creates this literal green route for waste to travel efficiently.
Very cool. And Clean City, you mentioned their focus on women.
Right. Clean City is a social enterprise down in Chitwan. They're building a self-sustaining, community-based waste management system. Their model focuses heavily on waste separation right at the source, composting organic waste, and recycling everything possible. The goal is to reduce landfill waste by a massive 90%.
90%.
Ambitious, but they're working towards it. But their greatest achievement might be social. They employ predominantly women, over 70% from marginalized communities. They provide them with fair wages, proper protection, training, and, crucially, financial independence. It's a powerful act of social and economic engineering, solving an environmental problem by creating a social solution simultaneously.
That's fantastic. Okay, our final segment. Education. Nepal's education system, like many areas, faces serious challenges. Inequalities in access, geography, gender, ethnicity play a big role. And there are critical quality issues, too. Yet here again, Jugaad-inspired grassroots initiatives are showing amazing effectiveness.
Yeah. Well, their success, I think, comes from a really holistic, human-centered approach. They understand that education isn't just a standalone product you deliver. It's deeply embedded in a complex network of social, economic, and cultural barriers. So they design solutions for the entire system, not just one isolated part.
What do you mean by the entire system?
Well, a government approach might focus just on, say, building a school building, which is important, but not enough. These grassroots projects recognize that even if a school exists, children, especially girls, might not attend. Why? Maybe their families can't afford uniforms or books. Maybe there's no safe transport. Maybe there's intense pressure for early marriage.
Ah, okay. They look at the real barriers.
Exactly. And the brilliance of this is perfectly shown by the NAF Rhythm M partnership. They developed this really comprehensive approach for the marginalized Chepang community, and the results are just stunning. School attendance shot up from 60% to 95%. Overall attendance hit 90%. Literacy and numeracy rates jumped by 35%.
Wow.
But maybe most impressively, 70% of girls who were previously almost certainly condemned to early marriage. That was the fate of about 60% of Chepang girls. They remained in school instead. That's life-changing impact.
That is extraordinary. What was the secret? How did they achieve that?
The secret, really, was systematically eliminating the barriers to education. They
Mm.
provided transportation, they offered scholarships, they set up mentoring programs, they ran life skills workshops focusing on practical things like hygiene and healthcare. This comprehensive support addressed the real-world obstacles stopping kids from learning. It transformed not just educational outcomes, but entire life trajectories.
That's powerful stuff. And we're also seeing the rise of community learning centers, CLCs, in rural areas, right?
Yes, absolutely. Where formal schools are maybe inaccessible or just not very effective, these CLCs become vital community hubs. They offer multiple functions, not just primary education for kids, but also adult literacy classes, especially crucial for women who missed out earlier. They offer vocational training too, things like sewing, carpentry, basic computer skills, practical things people need, and even health education.
So they're much more than just schools.
Definitely. They're really institutions of continuous practical learning for life, providing immense value to the entire community, not just the children. It's a testament to local solutions addressing holistic community needs.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us listening here? The story of Jugaad in Nepal, it's clearly an evolution, isn't it? From clever hacks to these complex integrated systems, from individual survival tactics to building community resilience, and from informal solutions to formal, sustainable business models. Nepal's innovators, it seems, aren't just solving their own problems, they're actually creating a kind of blueprint for a more sustainable and resourceful future, maybe for everyone.
I think that's right. And more broadly, we can distill some key principles from Nepal's quiet revolution for you, the listener. First, maybe accept limitations as a catalyst. Scarcity often forces you to focus on what truly matters, and that can lead to really cost-effective breakthrough solutions. Don't see constraints only as negative.
Good point.
Second, build systems, not just products. The most effective innovations we've seen here are these integrated models, ones that combine multiple types of value like the agrivoltaics or that holistic education approach. Think bigger picture. Third, community ownership really seems to be the key to sustainability. Decentralized, community-owned models, whether in energy or waste management, they're proving much more reliable and sustainable than top-down directives.
Right. And finally,
Finally, empower the marginalized. It's striking how often the most effective solutions seem to come from or deeply involve the most vulnerable groups, especially women. These solutions deliver both economic and profound social benefits. It's not an either.
so in an era of, let's face it, global austerity and increasingly complex challenges everywhere, these principles of Jugaad being lean, flexible, inclusive, and innovation, they feel more relevant than ever, don't
Yeah.
they?
Absolutely. The quiet revolution in Nepal really shows that the most powerful solutions often emerge not from fancy corporate boardrooms or grand government plans, but from the minds of ordinary people who dare to reimagine the world with just what they have right at hand.
So a final thought for you to take away. As you reflect on the challenges in your own life or perhaps in your community, consider this. How might these principles of Jugaad, doing more with less, turning limitations into advantages, empowering those closest to the problem, how might they apply to your solutions? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.